Cool. Well, thanks for joining, guys. We have a guest today, Danielle, also known as, is it the Soul Hacker,
The
right?
soul hacker, yeah.
Yeah, cool. And I actually want to get into that, what that comes from and all that stuff. But welcome,
Thank
welcome.
you. I'm glad to talk to you guys. I feel
Yeah,
like we have so much in common, and
yeah,
this is great.
yeah,
Absolutely. So maybe we can start off kind of like behind your name. We would love to know kind of
yeah, yeah,
how that came to be. I think it's pretty
The soul
unique.
hacker.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm always seeing so much of people sharing from the biohacking world.
Mhm.
And I think biohacking has merit, whether it's cold plunging or it's infrared sauna
Right.
or red light therapy, all that stuff is great for a healthy person. So
Yeah,
if a perfectly healthy and well person jumps into a cold plunge or, sits in a sauna all day or does any of these things, guess what? Their health is probably going to improve. But for somebody who is chronically ill and you throw them in a cold plunge
yeah.
or an infrared sauna or one of these things, you could set them back
I agree.
for weeks and months.
Yep.
And I think people are so desperate for solutions and they look to the biohacking world because they see these people showing, oh, look what happened to me. I feel so good. And
Yeah.
I feel like soul hacker to me is, I think biohacking has merit for those purposes, but also soul hacking is really tapping into the essence of your soul. There's a lot of
Mm,
emotional stuff that goes on for people that are not well.
Right.
And so doing more soulful practices, really tapping into the mindfulness, the meditation, the visualization.
mhm.
For me, also doing Tai Chi and Qigong, the
Yeah,
breath work, all of it is connecting to the essence of your soul and hacking that really
yeah,
to achieve the best health you possibly can.
That's
yeah.
awesome. That's dope.
Love
So
that.
would love to hear a little bit about your story and just how those methodologies have helped you heal on your journey. Because I agree, same thing. With cold plunges and with all this, when you're sick and you're
Yeah.
just shocking an already fried nervous system,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just
It's a
Joe
lot.
did
Right.
plunges recently and was
Yeah,
getting some palpitations and stuff like, and it's
yeah,
wild. And you see these health influencers online that have never been chronically sick, and
Yeah.
people like, oh, look, they're full of vitality, they have life, let me do this, and they realize, wow, this has messed me up. So
yeah.
I'm curious on that realm. We read that you dealt with Lyme disease and long COVID. What were some of the modalities that really helped you recover?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I had, so when I first got Lyme in, I think it was around 2017, but 2018 was a diagnosis. And I was working in a functional medicine clinic. And the first time around, I was doing heavy approaches. I
Mm.
was doing 10 pass ozone, which I don't know if I would suggest that at this point for some
Yeah,
people because it's a lot to tolerate.
I
But
did the same thing too. I did a 10 pass ozone
Yep.
back in the day. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
I did 24 of them.
Oh
How about
wow.
that?
Yeah.
24
Oh
10 pass
god.
ozones.
Yeah.
I did, it actually helped me though back
Yeah.
then. I was
Same.
doing that,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
using,
Ozone helped me for a short period of time. It didn't
Yeah,
last.
it was temporary for me.
Yeah.
Like I never saw, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think
Yeah.
yeah, we both did ozone as well.
so you guys did that. I did UV light blood irradiation, which is
Mhm.
similar to ozone,
Yeah.
using a
Yeah.
UV light that actually cleans
Mhm.
out your blood and parasites and mold and that sort
Yeah.
of thing.
Mhm.
I did a lot of hyperbaric, a lot of acupuncture, and besides the traditional, people taking antibiotics, I had to do the antibiotic route. I was doing it. I was getting injections of bicillin in my butt,
Yeah.
and but I also was using a drug called Alinea, which
Yeah.
actually you
Yeah.
were familiar with
I've
that as
done
well.
Alinea. Yeah, I've taken Alinea a lot in the past. I actually saw a little bit of benefits from that as well. Now that I'm
Yeah, because it breaks up the biofilm.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it was, at that point in time, those types of therapies were really working well for me. And I
Yeah.
actually I would say within a year and a half. Now I was bad. And prior
Mm.
to that, when I was like 30, I had thyroid cancer. And thank God I recovered from that.
Yeah.
But when I had Lyme and I didn't know what it was, I thought it was a recurrence of my thyroid cancer
Mhm.
because I was having such anxiety, major
Yeah.
palpitations, dizziness, a lot of the same kind of symptoms, and I couldn't really
Yeah.
differentiate. And then after I did this protocol, I would say like a year and a half later, I was strong. And then COVID rolled around and I didn't have COVID yet, but it was lockdown. I was living in Manhattan, stuck to my apartment building. So out of boredom, I lived on the 10th floor and I was able to run up and down my stairs. I jump roped. I even walked to Queens out of boredom from
Yeah.
Manhattan. I'd walk to Trader Joe's on the west side of the city. I lived on the east side, carry back my groceries like weights. So I was strong even after the Lyme. So when COVID came around, I was like, if I get it, it's not going to be a big deal. Like I'll be resilient, right? I've kind of been through stuff. I had this mild case of COVID. It was during the Delta variant, but it was like, I think, a lot of people with Lyme, like we don't tend to get colds a lot. Our immune system is so dysregulated. Like even it doesn't hit us through like maybe sneezing and coughing, but it hits us internally that we just
Yeah.
get really drained.
Yeah.
And when I
That's
got the
me.
COVID, right? Like
Yeah.
my symptoms were not that bad, but
Yeah.
like I was drained.
Yeah.
And then after the 10-day period, I thought I would just go back to life. And I'm like, what the hell's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Like, I
Right.
just,
Wow.
was not okay. And that's when this nightmare really began.
Yeah. That my story is so similar to yours as well.
Really?
Yeah, I did the same thing. So like I healed from Lyme and I did a lot of the traditional stuff with limited success. And you brought up like Alinea and ozone. And some of these things like sort of were like little band-aids that helped a lot. Or not
Yeah.
a lot, but just like helped temporarily. It wasn't like, it got me completely well. But I had the same sort of deal. Like where I got better from Lyme. A lot of it was back then it was mind body work that we do now. I was kind of doing traditional sort of treatments and then also like alternative therapies. Like I was doing, some of like the Cowden protocol herbs and things like that,
Yep.
along with, nervous system work. And then I just completely, stopped all of that and just did nervous system work and then
Right.
healed, right?
Yes.
along with
Yes.
along with that sort of stuff. But when I got COVID, when I relapsed, I guess it's been about 3 years now, a little over 3 years when I
Yeah.
relapsed after getting COVID. It was the same deal. The COVID was really mild for me. It was like I was like, prior to that, I was working, I was, kind of partying with friends a little bit, drinking, on
Me too.
weekends.
I was able to. I was
Yeah,
able to tolerate alcohol back then, even through the Lyme. I would during COVID, like when
yeah,
like there was lockdown, I was having a glass of wine all the time, going to the
yeah,
park with friends.
sure,
Like it
yeah,
didn't bother me at
yeah.
all.
I was
Yeah.
drinking, I was doing the same thing. Like
Yeah.
I would hang with friends. I worked in advertising, and I actually got COVID at my work holiday party, and I was
Oh
so drunk. Like we had
God.
like a full bar. I worked in advertising, but when I got COVID, it was actually really mild. Like I had a fever for like a few days, but like I didn't have like a lot of like people had issues with like breathing and coughing.
Right.
No, I didn't have any of that. Like I was just like, I felt like crap for like a week, and I was similar to you. I was like, I'll just go back to normal. And after a week, 2 weeks, it was just like it was not going back to normal. In fact, I was going down. I was getting worse. Like all of the Lyme symptoms that I previously had were coming back, and then like flaring worse, and like I was feeling awful. And so it's kind of like same sort of deal as
It's so bad. Like I said it was Lyme on steroids.
yeah,
Like
yeah, same.
that's what it felt like. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm kind of curious because I think our stories are going to be very similar, but you said you tried to go back to doing some of the previous things that worked for Lyme, and I actually tried to do the same, and it failed miserably. And I'll get into my story,
Same.
but I want to hear your story. So like, when you got COVID and you started going downhill, you probably were like reaching for the old resources, like whether it's like
Yes.
supplements or medicine or even trying some of these other things. What was that turning point where you're like, this is not working anymore, and I gotta there's something else, or maybe I gotta figure something else out? Because I'm curious, because I had a turning point like that on my
Right.
journey.
And
Josh.
just I guess what the biggest shift was
Yeah,
for you,
yeah,
what brought the biggest shift for you?
yeah,
Yeah. So same thing. I try to retrace my steps,
yeah,
and I think I would have had a quicker healing had I not done that because I threw the grenade approach at myself. I was like, I'm going to just do everything. Ugh,
yeah.
like I probably did like another 60 hyperbaric sessions,
Wow.
which that didn't really harm me so much. But then I did EBO2, which
That is.
EBO, Josh, you seem to know what EBO2 is.
Improve it.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's similar to like the 10 pass ozone,
Yeah.
but it's you using UV light blood irradiation. It's very heavy and it's I started to faint during the treatment. Like towards the end I couldn't feel my legs.
Yeah.
And then I started to pass out and they
Mhm.
revived me. But I was like, what the hell? And then after that, I was in bed for weeks. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, like this is not working.
Yeah.
And then I finally started to have some strength, but I felt like it was scary. I felt like a half dead person. Like
Yeah.
even after that, like I was still working in a functional medicine clinic doing
Wow.
nutrition this whole time. I never quit my job. Like I never
Wow.
took
Props
disability,
to you.
nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I remember like then I tried to walk to work and I started to like I didn't even know I had POTS, and then I
Yeah.
started to have these palpitations where my you know my I would just stand up and it was like my resting heart rate, which is normally like 55, 60, was like 130, 140.
Yeah.
My blood pressure would drop, the whole thing. I diagnosed the POTS before it was officially
Yeah.
diagnosed. Like
Yeah.
I definitely have this thing. So
Yeah.
then I go to this, I get this, I finally get this appointment with this like so-called top neurologist, $6,000 for an appointment, by the way, which is so insane. And he says you have POTS, and he also gave me some other diagnosis of CIDP, which is like
Yeah.
demyelinating thing going on in your brain that's similar to MS, right? So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
I've been like the most, even with the Lyme, like I've always been very fit. I also taught yoga for 20 years. So I
Yeah.
was like, am I going to have like, what's going on? So it scared the crap out of me. And he said, we need to start you immediately on IVIG, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
IV immunoglobulin therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sent a nurse over, and now she's doing 5-hour drips on me, giving me this. And then after I'm done, I have these massive migraines where I feel like I have oh my God, I can't even think of the word right now, but these migraines were so bad that I was just like,
Yeah.
this is no way to live. Like I got to the point, I was like, you know how dogs, like, and I love animals and I have a dog,
Yeah.
and I'm like, when dogs are suffering, they get put down. I was like,
Yeah.
there's no way for somebody to live. Like, I don't even want to live anymore.
Yeah.
That is literally the place that I got to.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm done with all these doctors. Like I'm doing these treatments, spending tens of thousands, probably with this neurologist, probably went in like $30,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no better. I just felt like I was progressively getting worse. And I'm thinking like scared for my life. Like I was just like, I'm never going to, like, how am I going to heal? So I just said, I'm done. I'm done with all these therapies. And I'm going to go into the visualization.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you how that worked, but it was interesting, my visualization, how it brought me to my teacher
Wow.
of martial arts, and how my life
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really transformed from coming there. So yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really cool. And I think that, when you say that, we talked earlier on, before we started this, like, even with the Lyme stuff, you were agoraphobic, you were really struggling. I mean, for me, I didn't have a break. So I got sick in 2006, and all the way to, what are we, 2005? By 2022, like bed sick for the most of the time.
Wow. That
On the
is,
couch, like
Yeah.
neuropathy from the waist down. And I did all the things, I did hyperbaric oxygen. I had a soft tank. Like I went and did hard dives, was doing bee venom therapy, IV ozone. And I mean, years and years and years of this stuff. I had a PICC line. I think Joe had one as well. We were doing IV antibiotics, doing all the things, finding all the top LLMDs. And for me,
yeah.
Bankrupt.
yeah, I literally in 2009 I went bankrupt because I'd already spent $120,000 on treatment, and I wasn't able to work. Like I was.
And that's what's so messed up. Things are so expensive. And then most people who need all these treatments have to go on disability or can barely work. So it's like so messed up that's
right. It was, and I mean, I was 26 at the time. I'm 45 now. And
wow.
I had a great job. I was a senior engineer for the federal government, like had great insurance. And this is after my insurance picked up stuff. This is still
Yeah.
And, same thing, was having terrible palpitations, went to see different cardiologists, went to see the top electrophysiologist in the country. And I was about 3 weeks out from getting a pacemaker put in. Like my health was terrible. And I mean, before this, I was super active, been an athlete my whole life. Like never had any issues. Same thing. Like I could drink, and I went spiraling down. And it was like, man, and I did all the treatments. I went to all the alternative health clinics. My wife is a nurse. She worked at a clinic, and I'm so thankful for these functional medicine doctors and stuff like that. But me, unfortunately, as I went through, I really didn't see any sort of shift in my health. And for me, what I realized is as we kind of moved towards mind body medicine, and I wanted to stay away from the woo woo because uh,
Yeah.
it's not woo woo because the science supports it. As an
I
engineer,
like the woo woo stuff, by the way.
yeah,
I
I
because
do some woo woo too. I do all the
go
quantum
both ways
stuff.
with
So
it.
yeah, I'm kind of in it also.
Yeah,
yeah. So, but what I realized is behind all the woo is a lot of science.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's deemed woo woo because people can't profit from it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
As I started diving in, we started doing meditations, visualizations. I started moving my body again. We started exercising, doing Tai Chi and Qigong.
yeah,
And, how you said, and this is the part that I want to see how you went into martial arts. For me, I believe that there is something so beautiful and resilient in the human spirit when we find something that we fall in love with
yeah,
and we
That's a
start doing it
huge part of
and
it.
we do it consistently. I found more healing in that than I did in all the antibiotics, than in all the medicines, because I fell in love with it. And for me, ironically, it was coaching basketball. I'd always had this dream because when you get sick, you stop dreaming. You think you're not capable of doing the things or enjoying life. You're just kind of white knuckling it through. And when I realized that I needed to surrender, to stop fighting so hard, to calm my nervous system down, to allow my body to do what it was designed to do,
yeah,
and then
Yes.
it was crazy. I went from being complete, and I'm fully transparent. I'm not 100% now, but I live a very full life. But I went from being not able to function, not being able to take
yeah,
care of my kids. I went from the couch to the bed, to the bed to the couch. If I showered 3 times in a week, that was a good week.
yeah,
I couldn't get
It's-
out. I couldn't
It breaks
engage
my
in life.
heart. It's like,
And here's the crazy thing: is there's so many people out here that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get better. And I've never met, and I've been in this for a very long time, for over 20 years, a doctor that's treating patients at over 30% of getting them better. Yet they're shoveling out all these money for
yeah,
treatment. And I think that there is validity behind stuff like ozone and hyperbaric oxygen and stuff like that. But in the Lyme community specifically, I just never saw people getting better.
yeah,
And it was unfortunate, specifically people that had been chronic for a long time. And then we started looking at nervous system work. And then honestly, just like I said, finding that thing, and for some people, for you as martial arts, and this is where I kind of
yeah.
want to hear,
I want
like,
to hear.
what was it for you that shifted? Like, how did that look like getting up and doing it in the beginning? I'm sure that it had to be insanely
Yeah,
hard. Like, what
yeah.
was the experience like for you?
So
yeah,
you make a good point. There's martial arts, but then there's something you're also very passionate about. And you talk about you playing your son in his basketball. And like for you, that's really something. So when I was growing up, I was obsessed with martial arts movies. My dad is estranged, unfortunately. I haven't seen him since I'm like
yeah,
whatever kid, but
Right.
that was how we bonded over like we would watch kung fu movies. So like I grew up, I would see the most like random like 1970s like
Right.
whatever these funny ones that are dubbed, the whole thing.
yeah, yeah,
And I just loved it. And I for a girl it's kind of weird, but like if I could find one on TV, like I would even watch it later in life. And in my mind, like I always wanted to learn martial arts, but I was always a yoga instructor. And for whatever reason, when I was feeling really sick, I always was a visualizer. I always visualized and did meditation my whole life. I learned it from my mother when she was dying. Unfortunately, when she was young, she taught me. So I started meditating when I was 11. So I said, what is the epitome of health? And for me, what did that look like? Someone who could do, if you could do kung fu, right? Like in a precise, very strong way, that means you're grounded. That means your brain is working well. And in my head, it meant you were healed. So my visualizations weren't like visiting the doctor and getting this great thing. It was like just doing this like
yeah,
badass kung fu in my visualization. But I didn't even know how to do martial arts. Like this is just, I would kind of make up stuff in my mind. So I come out of the visualization and I'm like, okay, like now what? So finally I said, I'm going to get there somehow. I know it sounds so insane, but so I was like, well, Tai Chi it is Kung Fu. It's just not, it's internal. It's not the external Kung Fu. But I'm like, let me see. So I found this teacher. And since I split my time between New York and Miami, I found a teacher down in Florida and he had classes in the park with a bunch of seniors. And I felt like I couldn't even do martial art, Tai Chi with the seniors in the park.
yeah,
So I asked if he would work with me privately. And He agreed, and he also had chronic fatigue himself at one point, and he was a external kung fu teacher, and then from chronic fatigue, he moved into the internal arts, and he's like strong as an ox. Like he
Mm.
is fully healed and fully grounded, and he got me, and he didn't know Lyme, but he knew fatigue.
Yeah, yeah,
So we would work in the park, and we would talk about grounding, and we spent a lot of hours per week together, and I just kind of hung out with them and learned. And I just, being in nature and being in the park
mm,
with him and doing these practices, like I just started to feel good. His vibe was so balanced. He's a Buddhist, and like he
yeah,
was so compassionate to me, and I just loved being around him.
yeah,
And he, started to help me to just build up my chi and my life force doing these movements. And I would say even within a month, like my strength, like I had this, I was saying that I had chronic fatigue, right? But now I don't even like to label,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that left within a month. And I'm like,
yeah.
wow, the fatigue's gone, but I still have, vertigo and light sensitivity and other stuff. But like I was starting to get better. And after doing this, I told him about like my kung fu fantasies, like how I was, doing this visualization. And he said, there is a form that you can practice called Wing Chun, which is actually what Bruce Lee did. But
Yep.
the interesting part about Wing Chun is that there's also a lot of movements that are done in the first few forms that are all about the nervous system and proprioception. So you're doing these things with your hands, and you're just shifting and moving in a certain way that doesn't require as much stamina, but it
Mm.
it does help you in these areas. So I thought, let me start off with doing that. And I went to a martial arts studio in Manhattan, and like I remember telling the teacher like I had Lyme and Long COVID and this and that. I'm like giving him a whole song and dance about like how unwell I was, and I did just fine. And I fell in love with it. It felt like my visualizations, and maybe to your point, Josh,
Yeah.
like it made me feel so badass that I was like so sick, and like I'm in this class with all guys, and like I'm able to participate. And when I go there, I just light up. And when I'm with my,
Mm.
Tai Chi Qigong teacher, I light up. That is my essence. That's like my happy place. And it has helped so much with my health and energy. Like I went from like I would say I was at like 15% before. Like I was terrible. And I go between like 80 and 90% on a good day. Like
Yeah,
I'm 90% better. There are things that set me
yeah,
back, stress and not sleeping and things like that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
my God,
same.
like it really, really, really shifted.
Yeah, this
So
is
I
this is
think that's kind of a
powerful.
testament when we talk
Yeah,
about, so we've dived really deep into mind body medicine and what it's seen, and we've researched it. And we actually have a 30-year psychologist that's in our class that understands the brain and how it works. And it's been,
Hmm.
but what we've seen is when people have healings, radical remissions, things like that, it's when they shed the identity of their illness and they go out and they begin to live life and they pursue the things that they
yeah,
love. And I believe that it regulates the nervous system. You're no longer dumping the cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstreams, and things begin to shift. I didn't know if you had any perspective or insight on it, Joe.
yeah. I also, because here's the deal. I think this is a good point for us to all talk about, because I think that there is resistance for a lot of people who are chronically ill that may be watching this right now. They're like, these guys can do kung
I can't
fu,
do
but
that.
yeah, I can't do that. And I want to
You're
talk
not as
about
sick
that.
as I was, right?
Yeah, you're not as sick as I was, and I want to talk about that because this is something that we see even in our class and people we work with, and I'm sure you see it as well, Danielle. There's a resistance, whether it's from just social media. People tell them chronic fatigue syndrome or Lyme. You have to rest. You should not move your body. You don't want to crash and all that sort of stuff, and there's this resistance with a lot of people. It's my fatigue is too bad. I cannot move my body like that. I can't do these things because the fatigue and my pots and all this sort of stuff. And what we teach and what we try to get people to do is no, you actually need to move your body. This is how you heal a lot of these things. And I'm big in qigong and tai chi, and we talk about yoga and getting back to the gym. And this is how a lot of chronic fatigue people actually get better. This is what I've seen anecdotally with a lot of
Definitely.
people. And so I want to, I'm curious your thoughts on this. Did you have resistance to moving?
Oh
Or
yeah. I
you were
mean,
like, yeah,
Were there
you know,
fears?
I
Like, like my body won't hold up,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, I was afraid I would get so dizzy. I don't know what would happen to me, or my body won't hold up, or am I going to be in bed for,
Yeah.
a week or two after doing this? And I
Yeah.
found that going to the gym, like that kind of stuff, if I just did like straight up kickboxing, yeah, I don't recommend that for someone
Yeah.
who's
Yeah.
chronically ill or to try, or
Not
to
when you,
try to
yeah.
try to do heavy cardio or anything like that. But like, so just for example, like I would start off and he would have me do exercises like just getting your feet in the grass and
Yeah.
just like tapping on your belly, like
Yeah.
qigong, like this just builds you up, and just doing this. And it seems like so silly, but like working on this whole area, the lower dantian, like, and
Yeah.
just basically it builds up your life force. It's also, it works on digestion. We know that 70 to 80% of our nervous system, I'm sorry, of our immune system lives in our gut.
Yeah.
And just doing an exercise like that, but just working here. Let me just get grounded. Okay, now I'm grounded.
right.
Now, to move on to something with breath that doesn't take too much exertion. So I started off like really, really babying myself. And it's
Yeah.
hard because like, I was an athlete when I was younger. I played, varsity basketball and ran track. And then I taught yoga for 20 years. So it's like, you just want to jump into things. I'm like, I don't want to do this geriatric stuff,
Yeah. Right.
but that's how you get there,
Yeah.
and even if someone is not well, even like there are certain things they can even do sitting down. And
Yeah.
yeah, it sucks. You're like, oh, and people feel like it's an all or nothing,
Yeah. No.
but
No.
these small steps, the way they lead to bigger improvements is really like, it's really amazing.
Yeah.
So I think people, yes, they should be afraid of like, running themselves into the ground.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not appropriate.
No.
But
No.
doing these softer things that just get you moving, and whether it's yoga or tai chi, or if maybe there's something else that is just movement and breath that I'm
Yeah.
not mentioning right now, like it's so critical. So
So,
Yeah.
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 So so I want to because I think this is the important part. So people will be like, I did this for a week and I didn't feel anything, and I think that
Yeah.
I'm curious
Yes.
how big consistency was for you. Sometimes just the act of just showing up and putting your feet, the bare feet in nature, or just showing up and doing simple movements. I mean, some days it might look like you're able to do more, and some days it's not. But I
And some
think that
days you can't.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I can't tell you how many days that when I went back to New York and it was the winter and I went out into the park behind my apartment and it's freezing cold and I'm like, I need to ground. And I'm sitting there barefoot, like trying to do this movement, and people are walking by like, what the hell is she doing?
yeah,
But I did it. I just kept doing it. I kept doing it. I was like, it's do or die for me. Like I have to get better.
Yeah.
I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better.
I
I
love it.
am better. Like it
Yeah.
just, I kept
that's
repeating that. So it's consistency, and you're going to have, everyone's going to have crappy days. That doesn't mean that you've regressed all the way back to your former self.
Yeah.
It's just a crappy day,
Mhm.
that's
And I think that's what people need to realize. Like it's not every day is going to be a win. And that,
Yeah.
but that's a cycle of life. It's like, it does only happen in your physical space, right? Like life is a challenge in every
Yeah.
aspect. You can have like, get a promotion, everything's
Yeah.
awesome, like whatever. And then it sucks,
You lose your job, or you get, you break up with
Yes.
your partner. So it's like that in life. And that's, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. It's the journey, the healing journey is just the life journey. It's the hero's journey. It's going through the ups and downs of everything, and coming out the other side, better, a better version of yourself, more wise, more compassionate, more understanding. There's something I want to kind of go back to, actually, because
Yeah.
I think both of us had this epiphany, this realization, and probably all three of us, when we were doing the old way of trying to heal, the treatments and all of that. I'm curious to hear your story, where that shift was, where you're like, this is not working anymore. I've got to make changes in a different way. For me, it was kind of like, it was almost like a divine thing in a way. I got like a message from God or whatever.
No, I'm
Yeah,
very spiritual and I pray
yeah,
every morning. That's a huge
yeah,
part of the
yeah,
healing too, which I don't always talk about.
yeah,
But I talk to God every morning when I wake up first thing in the morning.
yeah,
I just like I don't think I could get through this if I didn't have some sense of spirituality.
yeah.
So
I feel
that's
that. I feel that too. I think, um, So I think that there's just having something out there that you feel like there's a reason for this, that you're going through this, because I think all of us have hit that rock bottom. We all have been rock bottom, like, no, don't know where to go. Like, I am so sick, it feels like it cannot get worse. Like you were talking about, you just basically couldn't leave the house. I was there, 2.5, 3 years ago, when before me and Josh started the Healing Dudes. Um, and I know Josh was there as well, where you're just like, I
Yeah.
don't even know if I, like, you're kind of, you had mentioned it earlier, where like, I don't even know if I can live anymore. Is this the end of my life? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think we've all been there. And I want, whoever is watching this or listening is to understand, if you're there, the only place to go is up. And sometimes the rock bottom is where you have these profound epiphanies and shifts, where you're like, this way is not working anymore, so let me go a different path. And I don't know for you, Danielle, where that shift lied, when after COVID happened and you
Yeah,
got.
it didn't right away. I mean, it was after all the diagnoses that I had received and the labels and being
Yeah,
told, this laundry list of scary things.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to take a break from doctors. And I worked in a clinic, and not to mention, I also was in the middle of doing a program to do functional testing on my own clients, because I've been a nutritionist for so long. And I was like, oh, you have to like search for the root cause of everything. And I'm
Yeah,
not saying it's not good to know the root cause,
Right.
but when your body is so metabolically disturbed in so many levels,
yeah,
if you do all these things, whether it, you know, heals your adrenals or your dysregulated glucose or chronic fatigue or Lyme disease or autoimmunity, it's the same practices. And I'm like,
Yep.
I don't even care anymore. Like as long as I know, God forbid, like it's not something that's cancer, you know what I mean? That needs
yeah,
to
yeah,
be treated. But I know it's like in the realm of the autoimmune, Lyme, long COVID, whatever. I don't need to know exactly what it is. So people are so fixated on like, if I just find out,
yeah.
then I'm going to heal. Do not wait.
Dude,
So
it's not good. Yeah.
yeah, I literally put on like, like silent on my phone from all doctors for a year. And I
Wow.
just went into the mindful practices. The only doctors I did see were an acupuncturist, and also I worked with a chiropractor to do nuka, which is a gentle form of manipulation
Mm.
on the neck, and it works on the cerebral spinal fluid and also the vagus nerve.
Oh, I
And
love
it
that.
helped me a bit with my vestibular symptoms as well that I was experiencing.
Cool.
That was it. But I was like, I need to, I can't be scared, because it is wrecking my nervous system so
Yeah.
bad. I am living, breathing, everything, fight or flight. I can't even behave like a normal person because my thoughts
Mm.
go to the negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So I have a question with that
yeah,
for you, and I'm curious how much of that nervous system work you feel like got you out of that. So I think that when we get sick, and we talk about this often,
Yeah.
like you have the illness, and then you have what the fear is doing to you, and the fear can actually just be as bad as the illness itself. And then if I talk about this often, I think we said it maybe on our last one, but if you were to take whatever your diagnosis is, and then you were to take nervous system stuff that's caused by fear, that's caused by dysregulation, that's caused by all that stuff, a lot of the symptoms align. So for POTS, like,
Mhm.
nervous system dysregulation can absolutely be a
oh
cause
God,
Yeah.
of that. And it's wild that we're not conscious of, I think we are now, but what the fear can actually do. So we get the sick, we have event X, whether it's long COVID, Lyme, reactivated Epstein-Barr, whatever it is. And then we become so fearful chasing that diagnosis that becomes our identity, that becomes our life. We stop living, and now we're inundated with nonstop fear, nonstop fight or flight. Our immune system shuts off. All of our hormones are out of whack. Our digestion's screwed up, and
yes,
it's literally once we find, and that's what I believe is, once we find that thing, once we're able to calm down the alarm systems, get the nervous system in a functioning thing, feel like we're finally at peace. There is so much, I don't know, there's so much healing, and there's not a price tag. Like when I feel regulated, when I feel at peace, like you said, stress is the one thing that can
Yeah.
completely topple over, I think. But you go to doctors and you'll say, like, it's a casual conversation. There's always a supplement, there's always a treatment, but they never actually hone in on that. So I'm curious, how big of a part of your healing journey was that, getting out of that fear mindset?
Oh God, like super huge. I would say at least 85%. I did see a post of yours that I want to make note of that you
Yeah.
talked about nervous system work, and there also is a role in nutrition and
Yes.
other things. So I want to like look at the
Yeah.
whole constellation of things and not say it's only the nervous system,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it is a huge part. But the thing is this, a lot of therapies, good nutrition, or let's say you're doing hyperbaric or you're taking supplements, when your nervous system is regulated, you're going to receive those
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
better and then receive the healing, right? When you're in the fight or flight and you throw those things at you, you can have a pristine diet and take handfuls of supplements, and they can't even penetrate into the cells because
Yeah.
your body's not accepting it. So
Mhm.
it allows the therapies that you do to be managed much better. So the
Yeah.
nervous system work is so, it's just massive. It's massive. And,
Mhm.
just, I mean, even little things you can do, like I'm sure most people who are listening to you are pretty sophisticated and they know about grounding, but like it's,
Yeah.
it's so critical to do grounding. Like, I
Yeah.
mean,
I agree.
especially with all the Wi-Fi and all the electromagnetic fields, like
Yep.
I'm super sensitive. I don't know if you
Yeah.
guys are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
ground
it's
every
like,
day.
It,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
such a big part of our journey, and we are firm believers in diet. So Joe has his master's in nutrition, and we've
Yeah.
both been super vigilant. Like I don't cheat on my diet. Like that is the one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's pristine, it stays pristine, and I do believe that. So it's like nervous system. There's multiple pillars that are a part of it,
Yeah.
like you said. So I think there's nervous system work. There's movement. You have to move your body. You have to
Yeah.
ground. You have to connect to nature, and it's not woo woo. Like we're all energy. Like
It's not woo woo, but
right.
also like I find that, and you may experience this too, like being around people who are like stressing me out or like situations, like my threshold is like
Yeah.
zero. Like if that
Yeah.
starts
Same.
happening to me and someone's draining me, I'm like, get away from me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just I
Yeah.
have to set such boundaries
Yeah.
of who I allow into my life these days because that like throws me off kilter.
Yeah.
So I like handle life much differently. And I think that really keeps you truer to your purpose because you don't put up with BS. It's like you're
Yeah.
just sort of like you do what feels like authentic and good to you, and like you don't have time for the nonsense. Like you just your body doesn't want it. Like you're living your almost like it's forcing you to live the truest to your soul
Yeah.
because if you don't, like we feel every single thing. So I feel like I'm living so much more aligned with who I should be as a human because
Right.
like if I try to like live a lie, my body feels it and then I feel sick. So I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
just going to do what feels good and right and purposeful, you know?
Yeah. I,
Love that.
that's amazing. So I think that in kind of closing, it's amazing because we've all experienced healing to various levels and degrees, but I think to the point where we're all functional, we're all enjoying life, and we realize
Yeah.
that we have to manage stress. And I think that we've talked on some really key point. Diet's huge, but like we said, if we don't, there's kind of a tiered approach. If we don't address the nervous system, like if we don't address that and get out of that, the diet doesn't matter or the other stuff doesn't matter. So we address the nervous system, we fix our diet. For me, spirituality was incredibly important. Like I pray every morning. Like my faith is
Yeah.
probably one of the most important things in my life, and that's kind of evolved as I've started to heal and realized that I do have peace. And now that Joe and I've kind of found a purpose and a calling in trying to help people heal, that it's not just something that we're trying to make money. Like this is our calling. As much as we've it's the ups and downs of it, as but we're always called back to it. And
Yeah.
I think that that's an important part of this is finding the things that you love in your calling, and you start to live intentionally. You get out of your house. Like,
Mhm.
there's a lot of people that are listening to this that are agoraphobic, that have this fear of living, and they don't realize that that fear is an illusion, that that barrier that we put that prevents you from going outside of
Yeah.
your house is simply
Even while you're sick. I just
yeah,
want to say,
dude,
even while
Yeah.
you're
carry
getting,
your symptoms with you. You're
yeah.
going to be uncomfortable healing. Understanding, as long as you cleared this with your doctor, and we're not giving medical
Yeah.
advice, that the very beginning of this, you're going to be uncomfortable. And that Joe says all the time, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's the only way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, in closing, I'm curious, was that part of your journey when you were doing the work in the beginning? Was it uncomfortable? Was it
Oh
scary?
God, it
Yeah.
was so uncomfortable. It was
Yeah.
so uncomfortable. It just, I mean, going to work was so
Yeah.
uncomfortable. Like, walking there, I'd walk and I'd like be wobbly and I, walk
Mhm.
almost like little over a mile, and I don't even think my body was able to do it. My mind is so strong that I'm like, I'm going to freaking get there,
Yeah.
and then I would have to stop and I'd have palpitations and then I would break down crying, but I just did it because I'm like, I'm not, I have to live, because if I don't live, like, what's the point of even
Yeah.
being here? Like, but I don't know, I always had this belief that, like, I was going to be okay. Like,
Yeah.
I knew I was going to be okay. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. And I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people don't believe that because this is so, it's so overwhelming. It's so overwhelming, but really that's the faith. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the faith is just huge. It's so
It's
huge. And it's interesting that you all three of, well, I didn't know you guys before, and
yeah.
that we all kind of were doing the same thing. Like, it lines up so
Yeah.
similar, and
Yeah.
it really is like the truth,
Yeah.
these are things that really work.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to chatting with you because I felt like we would just align with all this. And
Yeah.
the thing is, like, like what we talk about here, guys, is it really is just about shifting your lifestyle to one that is conducive to healing and that works for you. It's that's really what it is. Like, I look at chronic illness and all of these breakdowns we go as an invitation for us to come back to who we truly are and to find out what truly matters for us. Let go of all the outside noise. Like, some of the stuff, I don't know about you, but we don't watch the news. Like, we don't get caught up in, like, all of the stuff that's negative. Like, we try to protect our peace, and kind of like what you're talking about, people are bringing bad vibes and negative energy. We protect that. We tell other people, like, in our class and all that, that's what's important, is, like, nurturing yourself and making your health and yourself a priority. I think a lot of people with chronic illness, we tend to people please, do things for other people, not honor ourselves, and think like, I want to do that, but I'm too old for that, or like, I'm 41 years old, I still skateboard, like,
Yeah, that's
like,
awesome.
coming back to things that I enjoy, I think is a powerful healing tool. So yeah, what
I
were you
mean,
gonna
I was 40. I'm 46 now. I was
not
44
like 36,
and feeling like crap.
yeah,
And who starts kung fu at 44 after
yeah,
coming out of, like, this condition?
yeah,
And you know what I mean? Like, I don't know anybody. And then a
yeah,
female on top of that. Like, the whole thing is sounds so ridiculous, but,
yeah,
like, it's just, and this is, like, I feel like my journey, like, I want to continue on this, and, like, I feel like I want to do these practices forever. So, like,
Yeah.
yeah, just get out of all the mindset of, there's, like, limiting beliefs, right?
yeah,
It's just these limiting beliefs. So
Yeah.
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 Awesome.
Thanks for
Well,
sharing. Yeah,
yeah, thank you, Danielle. We definitely appreciate you talking with us today.
yeah.
If you could let people know how they can get in touch with you, where they can find you on social media, we'll put your information in the
Thank
description.
you. Yeah, it was so awesome talking to you guys too. So my website is soulhacker.com. It's soulhakker.com. And on Instagram, I'm the Soul Hacker, THE
Cool.
Soul Hacker.
Yeah, yeah. Please go check her out. Give her a follow. Check out her services. I don't know if you're, like, taking clients
I
or.
am taking clients, but I also I have a lot of the Tai Chi and Qigong more Qigong, just a little bit of beginner Tai
Yeah,
Chi that I did for my own healing. I have on the website that people could follow along and
cool.
do at home
Yeah,
just to start.
I love that. Love that. That's great. Yeah, thank you for joining us. We'll have to do this. We'll have to do another one in the future because I think
Yeah, I would love
we could
that.
go down so many different. Like, we could talk for hours on
I
stuff.
know, I
We
know.
try
It's
not
so
to
good.
go too long so people don't have to watch all this stuff. And after around 30, 45 minutes, people are like, okay, I'm done. So we
Yeah.
try to cut it around there. So thanks for joining us. And as you guys know, give us a follow on at the Healing Dudes on pretty much everything, and check out our website, thehealingdudes.com. We always have spaces available in our Mind Body Boot Camp. Josh, you got anything?
That's it.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for watching. All right.